everyone, welcome to Commander Pop Culture. If you like the video, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified of future content. Welcome to my fourth Commander Masters review. Let's get into it. First off, we got Treasure Nabber. This is one of my personal favorites. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for a mana, you can control that artifact till its turn. Most people run artifact ramp, mostly because it has generic costs and it's easy to fix your mana that way. And unless you're running green, there isn't much of an alternative way to ramp. If it's not color fixing, then it's usually something that produces a lot of mana. Soul Ring and Mana Crypt and maybe Moxes. If I don't know, depends on the play group that you're with. For $3.50, that's a good deal. Yeah, I don't know what this borderless version is going to go for because I think a lot of people are going to want it. I want it. I think it will be a little more coveted than most of the borderless kinds of cards. The downsides of this card is it ends up on people's cutting floors because you would think 3 mana isn't that big of a deal, but the purpose of ramp is to smooth out your early game, and you can't really smooth out your early game with 3 mana. By the point you hit 3 mana, the game has gotten so fast that you're already in the mid game, and you'll probably be a little behind. Treasure Nabber kind of helps you snap your way back into the game. The other thing is it can be inconsistent. So if you sit at a table and all of them are running land ramp kind of stuff, then you're going to be SOL. So people would rather cut this and just put in a rock of their own, just so they get the guarantee. Teferi Temporal Archmage. This guy is the best among the OG Commander Planeswalkers, and it's not for his -10 ability, it's for that -1 ability in particular. There is a lot of insane combo potential with untapping 4 target permanents. That includes your lands, that includes artifacts, creatures, what have you. And most of the time, this card gets paired up with the Chain Veil. You go +1, -1 an infinite amount of times, infinite amount of activations. And if you have one other Planeswalker in play that does some significant, like Tamiyo, $2.80, that's a steal. He's really good. Smothering Tithe. It's an extremely popular card. You can get it for $20, and people are going to be annoyed by me, but I don't play this card as much as I used to. It's because the game is incredibly efficient. I don't need an exorbitant amount of mana to win the game. So it kind of falls into niche decks now. If I'm playing a wheel deck, I love it because I'm going to get, an insane amount of treasures, and then I'll use that treasure to cast the spells that I wheel off of. So it kind of just feeds into itself. Other than that, if you're just playing this for value, I don't think you should. And that's because you could have all the mana in the world, but no toothbrush. If you don't have the spells or the sinks to use it. I already have this full art version, which I'm more partial to because it has the Orzhov coins on it, and I am partial to the guild. If you don't know the lore behind Orzhov, Ravnica is all about debt collections. If you can't pay your debts in life, you will be turned into a spirit and forced to pay debt even in death. So it's a quite brutal guild that functions in Ravnica. Of all the things you don't want to be beholden to, it's the Orzhov, and the tax collectors are brutal. So the story is awesome on this art, and I don't have an interest in buying this one. I hear some complaints about the coins because it's breaking the border and it's filling in the text box. And I've came across people telling me it's hard to read. That's a fair statement. Reliquary Tower. This is a uncommon, but since it's getting this full art treatment, it's worth talking about. I love the art. I love the transition of the dusty ground into the dark blue skies. I have the schematic full art version from the random Secret Lair inserts. That's worth $54. I'm willing to sell this and give it up so I can play this version. I'm a sucker for color, and the Secret Lair one just doesn't have it. So I'll have a nice, fun thing to add to my trade binder. If you get a cheap one for $3, I'd say Reliquary Tower is one of the best in terms of no max hand size because you don't have to make any investment in card slots. It also comes in untapped, so you're not losing any tempo with it. The only other no max hand size I typically find myself playing is Thought Vessel because I'm playing rocks anyways, it feels like I'm really stacking up the density on a single card, which is why I like these two in particular. So I know this is the Great Henge from Lord of the Rings set. It's like the box topper. Commander Masters is getting just a Reggie version of it. It just feels like weird timing, similar to the neck you saw from yesterday's video. I don't really... I don't understand the timing, like, at all. Like, if there is a silver lining to how this is all going down, is Commander Masters will release a bunch of Great Henge copies, and the more desirable full art one will be influenced and drop in price. So that's a good thing, I guess. If you are a collector and you're very serious about like flipping cards as like a living, like a store or something, you're probably going to be a little pissed because of the effect that I just described, is it's going to lose value not that long after Lord of the Rings came out. I'm a player first and a collector second. I own this copy, so there's no, like, to me, because I have those priorities, there's no skin off my back. I don't care. Like, I have the beautiful party tree.
Do you like parties?
Yeah.
We can invite all our friends and have soda and pie.
Yeah!
As weird as it is to call it that, I'm glad it's getting a reprint. It's one of those cards that prices a lot of people out. It has cost reduction, which makes this really powerful. You could, if you have a creature with 7 power in play, it's 7 less to cast, so you just have to pay 2 green. It's a mana rock that taps for double green, gains 2 life, and then whenever a non-token enters, you cantrip off of it, which is the desirable effect that people want. The mana that you gain is kind of like and the life you gain is kind of negligible. It's that bottom half that everyone cares about. If it is affordable, I highly recommend you try it. I run decks that don't care about creatures and are in green. I don't find myself putting the Great Henge in it, but when I am playing a creature strategy, oh hell yeah, Great Henge goes in there. No questions asked. It's for go wide strategies, not for going tall. So if you're doing Voltron or you're playing big dumb Tim creatures, then I'd pass on this. Heliod the Sun Crowned. This guy is a combo monster. He goes with Triskelion and Walking Ballista, because if you give him lifelink, you shoot someone once while it has lifelink, you deal the damage, gain a life, and then the Heliod triggers and puts the counter back on the target, so it's effectively infinite. Walking Ballista, you gotta be a little more careful. You have to cast it on X equals 2, because if you cast it on 1, when you remove the counter, state-based actions will kill the Walking Ballista. And then you have to pay another 2 to give it lifelink, so it's a bit of a mana-intensive combo. It takes 6 to do it, and then with Triskelion, it takes 8. It's not the best of combos, but it's a combo nonetheless, and you could run Heliod from your command zone to pull it off and shorten the amount of cards required by 1. And Heliod's also indestructible. Even though he may not be a creature when he ETBs, he's a creature on cast. So that's why you're allowed to get away with running these legendary creature god enchantments from your command zone. As for the price, you can get a copy for $17. It's going to get a lot cheaper for you. I think it'll sell somewhere between around 10. That's a good price. Or this is a good card for that price. So my version I have is the Constellation one, and then there's a Secret Lair one that looks kind of weird. This was like the Valentine's Day one. I didn't buy this one for not really liking the oil paint style. Balin the Wandering Knight is a bit of a bulk rare. You can get him for $6.75. He'll probably drop down to $1 after this set's release. He is a Voltron commander where he has double strike as long as you have 2 or more equipment attached to them. And then for a white and a colorless, you can bypass all the equipment costs on your equipment and just throw them all on him. It can be quite mana intensive to do that, and the greatest weakness of Voltron commanders is edict effects. So if you have a buddy that is running Plaguecrafter or Edict, you kind of need to kill them because they're not playing Edict or Plaguecrafter just one time. It's going to come up multiple times in the game, and once that happens, you're just screwed. You can't recover because your one sole way of winning the game is dealing combat damage, and if your opponents ever let you have your commander, you can't win. So it's a bit of a fragile deck strategy, and it works in casual games, not so much the higher you go in terms of competitive. I think for $1, he's a fair price, but Not very exciting for me personally. Vandal Blast. I have mixed feelings about this card. I love the full art. I'll probably pick it up for that. You get a copy for $4. I will tell you the good parts about this card first. For 1 mana, can destroy a target artifact you control. And then for 5 mana, you could blow up everyone else's artifacts that you don't control. The flexibility is the best parts, and it has a really nice low floor, and it has a really good high ceiling. But let me tell you the bad parts about this card. It's sorcery speed. If someone is comboing off with artifacts, which tends to happen a lot, this card isn't good enough. For me, playing the competitive games that I do, Vandal Blast is not good enough. Not very flexible for its targets. It can destroy one type of permanent. I would rather run instant speed removal that could hit multiple different types of permanent. A good example of that would be like Generous Gift or Beast Within. Even though they're more expensive, but you're paying that extra mana for the versatility. The other thing is if you're playing this to blow up everyone's artifacts, there's better ways to do it. A more expensive card that I am playing over Vandal Blast is Meltdown. When I'm trying to blow up everyone's artifacts, they're typically just obnoxious amounts of mana rocks or tokens, and I don't need to be investing 5 mana to kill everything, when if I play Meltdown, I could invest 1 to 2 mana and scoop up everything. I wish Meltdown was not as expensive, because that's my go-to. The other thing about destroying artifacts is if it's just a rock, you should just let it slide. Like, it's not the end of the world. The only time you should care about mana rocks is when they have a mana sink from their command zone, or if they have ways of drawing an exorbitant amount of cards. And in that scenario, I'm more worried about what's in their hand. You're just trying to slow them down and stem the bleeding by blowing up the artifacts. You're just delaying the inevitable. If someone draws 20 to 30 cards and you play the Vandal Blast overloaded, it's probably not going to be enough anyways. It gets back to their turn. They will have so many options to go from post Vandal Blast that it doesn't matter. And that's why I don't play this card as much as I used to. Queen Marchesa. Now this is a bit of a bulk rare. Get a copy of her for $2.90. I do like her, even though she is a bulk rare. You play the Monarch game where you're just playing tag back all game long. Who could hold on to it the longest? Because she enters the battlefield, become the Monarch, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent is a Monarch, you get to create a 1/1 assassin with Death Touch and Haste. So obviously, people are unwilling to trade their valuable creatures to a stupid token with Death Touch and Haste, and it allows you to get the monarchy back really easily. And the nice parts about this card is both the token and her have haste. It's not guaranteed that you get the monarchy back, and you get this version if you want, for $4. I bought this card because I think it's hilarious. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Ghostbusters 2. He's the painting on the wall that comes to life and tries to destroy New York. I think it's Vigo. Like me, has a face only a mother could love.
Hey, Vigo! Yeah, you, the bimbo with the baby.
Easton the Wandering Bard is coming out in this set. I chose to showcase this version because it's the one I own. In my opinion, the weirder the better. Most people don't like this card for that reason. It takes a lot of liberties with the organization of the card. But for me, maybe I'm a bit of a troll because I kind of like driving people a little mad. In my days of playing Modern and being a spike player, I'd purposely pick every card in my deck was a different art to piss people off. Some people are just a little religious about their decks, and I like being a little sacrilegious. But I digress. This guy used to be a top tier CDH commander because you get to tutor for stuff from the command zone. I don't know if he's as good as he used to be, though, because he also suffers from the game being faster. Tutoring for one thing a turn is almost not as good anymore, especially when you have to sink mana into doing it. At least when you invest the mana, you put the creature into play. So I guess that's the nice parts about Yusin. You get a copy for $1.28. I think people will be bummed out by this card if they get it in packs. Turned into a bulk rare, and it's going to be less than $1 come when it releases. Pure Steel Paladin. Now, I don't know what it is about white in this set, but they're pulling all the stops in terms of the art. I wonder if they got the same person to do all these, because they all look very similar to me. Let's see. Let's look at Grand Abolisher real quick. Richard Kane. Yeah, it is by the same artist. They clearly have a particular style, and I could pick it up just on just by looking at Pure Steel Paladin. This kind of reminds me of like old school art a little bit, and it has a way nicer facelift. Like you remember Dakon Blackblade from the old school Legends, but the colors are so much nicer, and the full art is obviously nicer. He's great in equipment Voltron decks, because whenever an equipment comes into play, you cantrip off of it, and then if you have 3 more artifacts, you have Metalcraft, and it makes all your equipment cost a big nice goose egg to equip all your stuff. So it's a staple.
Excuse me, I believe you have my stapler.
In Voltron decks for that reason, because it's taking away the weakest part of running equipment decks. I'm really excited about this card. I imagine a lot of other people are going to be excited about this card. I think because he's so integral to those equipment decks, the demand for this card will be really high. I actually suspect that there will be quite the disparaging difference between this art and every other iteration of this card, because everyone's going to want it. It just looks too damn cool. Hammer Nazan. This is a equipment that auto attaches to people. It also bypasses other equipment to automatically equip as it ETBs. So that's a nice part about this card. It just doesn't help with artifacts that are already in play. You kind of get that Sigarda's Aid feel to it. The other nice thing about this card is it makes your equipped creature have indestructible, and it gives a stat boost. It has the unholy trifecta on a single equipment. It's the 3 things that you want in Voltron strategies. You want to make your guy really hard to kill. You want to give it a stat boost, so you speed up the clock for your opponents, and then you bypass the costs. It's an extremely dense card. You want your equipment to be that dense on every single card. Keep an eye out for those kinds of equipment, and for $20, I understand its price point. Gonna be a lot cheaper come this set. It's also legendary, so you could fetch it with certain tutors. Like Captain Sisay could get it, and a very select amount of tutors. Like there's one from Kaldheim, and then this is an exciting print. If you are running Voltron, this is an auto include. This is another bulk rare that no one asks for. It's just expensive. 8 CMC. The game's too fast for 8 CMC spells. I see people abuse this card because it has a lot of keyword abilities. The Absand insect that cares about keywords from your graveyard. It's nice because you'll pump him up a ton and give all these keywords to him. It just sucks that this is a 25-cent card, and you should be pissed if you open it in a box. And I don't think anyone's playing it other than in those decks that care about keywords. Bengara the Diplomat. This is a $10 card. I don't think it's worth $10. It's a coattail. Whenever your opponent casts 2 creatures that specifically attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you get to draw. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell, each turn, draw. A little stipulation written. And those 2 things, the casting of 2 spells happens all the time. That's a reasonable thing to count on in terms of drawing cards, but the attacking with 2 or more creatures, people are going to avoid doing that to avoid giving you a card. Or at least they should, unless they're going to do a significant amount of damage to you. I wouldn't attack that player personally, just so I can deny them that trigger. It's also got a big butt. It blocks a lot of things, and it has lifelink. This guy makes an obnoxious wall. He just blocks everything efficiently, and then the stuff that does get through, if they do attack with more than 2 creatures, he'll gain life as well. So you're just hedging your losses. He's just a good defensive creature. But is he $10? Nah, he's not. He's not $10. If you're playing mono white, you play him. But if you're playing more colors outside of white, he ends up getting cut. And there's nothing else to it. It's just he's not consistent enough for the draw trigger. Grenzo Havoc Razor. Another silhouette, and I like it because the pastel goes along with the identity. That seems to be a recurring theme. And the style also matters. I think they got the proportions of his character just spot on. Kozilek was blown up like a blimp, and then we have Selvala has a pink background. I don't get it, but this looks awesome. Love how they captured his clearly violent nature. Get the scars on his bicep. Looks pretty kick-ass. If you don't know what he does, whenever a creature you control deals damage to a player, choose 1. Go to target creature, or exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you get to cast it. So you're just like pilfering cards off of people's libraries. It's kind of like Ragavan. Grenzo does better than Ragavan. Is Grenzo doesn't have to be the one that connects with people. You can get more triggers than Ragavan. $15. He is probably overdue for a reprint based on that price tag, so I don't think he's worth $15. My experience with Grenzo is it's not as easy as it looks. He's just a unique commander, and that's why he's kind of priced the way that he is. Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Kind of reminds me of the enemy from the opening scenes of One Punch Man. I kind of want to do an altar and paint a little yellow dude off to the left, just about to blow a giant haymaker. For twisting his head off. It looks a heck of a lot better than Kozilek because I could actually distinguish who he is because he has those features of the mandibles and the color tones. The reason why you like the Eldrazi spells is because they specifically have cast triggers. This Ulamog is no different. You exile 2 target permanents, and it's just to help you kind of rubber band your way because that's a big investment. You're basically paying 5 mana to remove anything twice. The going rate is bad, but the flexibility is spectacular. And the attack trigger causes the defending player to exile the top 20 cards of their library. It'll take you a while to win that way. It's not the previous Ulamog. The previous Ulamog's a badass. It has Annihilator 4. So not only on the cast do you blow something up with that Ulamog, but the Annihilator 4 trigger causes your opponent to lose 4 permanents on attacks. And that Ulamog has such a huge stat block, it forces people to block. So based on the cast and on the first attack of the OG Ulamog, you're getting 5 permanents off your opponents, and the going rate on that is just sweet cheddar if you get to combat. They're both indestructible, so they're hard to deal with. That's the nice parts. I guess pick your poison as to what you like more, but I still think the OG version's better. And I'm interested in this full art, but let me show you the other one. We got a serial Secret Lair version. I'm partial because I like to get a good laugh. If you're a serious player, go for the other one. If you're not a serious player like me, I must have my iterations to be one specific variety. I am not a funny player. Magic is life. No, that's not me. Magic's meant to be fun, and like eating a bowl of cereal, it just taps into my inner child. You can get a copy for $34. You could get the Secret Lair one that I have for $37. I don't know what that full art version is going to settle around. It's a little spendy. If you pull it as a rare, that's really good. It's really exciting. Getting your pack's worth for sure if you get this. This is a card that I don't see that much anymore. I wish I did, because of all these like big Timmy kind of creatures, I love this one. Mostly because his rubber band is really good. Whenever he deals damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. So it's a board wipe stapled to a creature that is one-sided to the player that you hit. The 7 mana that you're investing into this is very worth that combat trigger. As flying, so it's evasive, so the likelihood of you getting that trigger is pretty good. The art looks spectacular. It kind of reminds me of Maleficent with those long black horns. $25, really spendy. Think it's worth it. The worlds I travel in, playing Magic, I can't play this as much as I'd like because people I play with, they play faster games, and 7 mana is just hard to squeeze into a deck. But if you're playing dragons, this is an auto include. Some decks that run big creatures that have super coupons like Animar, oh man, this thing is a beast. I'm excited for the reprint because I want people to be able to play this and have fun with it. Loyal Retainers. This thing is expensive because it doesn't have a lot of printings. It's a very rare card. It may not look very assuming, but returning a target legendary creature from your graveyard to the battlefield at the cost of sacking him can easily be broken. A deck I used to run this in is Gerard, the Ruther-like captain. You look at it and you read the text box and you say to yourself, wait a minute, that doesn't work. Well, let me explain to you how it does. When Gerard is in your graveyard and the exile triggers on the stack, you sack Loyal Retainers and you bring Gerard back to play. Now, the trigger remains on the stack. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't specifically say that Gerard has to be in your graveyard for that trigger to happen. So you'll return the Loyal Retainers back. Gerard will look for himself in the graveyard. He's not there. That part of the card doesn't happen. And you can loop your board over and over again if you have a sack outlet and kill people with Goblin Bombardment. And that's how you do it. You just got to you have to do it before you declare attackers on combat. It's just a weird clause because it's an old card. And Loyal Retainers has those types of combos in lots of different decks. I almost got kicked out of a store because I was in an EDH tournament where I was playing that Gerard combo. It was when Gerard was really new, and because Loyal Retainers is so rare and rarely seen, people would get hung up on that Gerard trigger because he wasn't in the graveyard anymore and thought it was cheating, and they didn't have any judges in the store, and it was left up to the store owner. And because the combo was so new, it's not something you could Google very easily. The store owner told everybody I was cheating, and that's when the mob started coming my way. I thought my car was going to get keyed or my tires were going to get slashed. That's the kind of reaction people were getting because there was prize support and I had won that prize support. And because I had already opened it and I was being difficult in their eyes about me relinquishing the win. Oh, that was a rough night. No one likes being accused of cheating when they weren't cheating, but because I was definitely the minority in that store, it was rough. It's not very common for stores to hold Commander tournaments. I was the odd man out. I was going out of my way to go to this place and check it out for the first time. Needless to say, I have not been back. I will not go back. And for those of you who know me, know the store, but I don't care to share the name of it on YouTube because I'm not malicious. I'm not the type of guy that do that kind of thing. So this is a $30 card. It's hard for me to gauge if it's worth it. On its own, it's good value. If you're in combo decks, it's spectacular. I think most of its price is due to its scarcity. I'll be very interested to see where its price settles comes this set. Oh man, my boy Micaeus, the Unhallowed. Not White Micaeus kind of sucks, but this guy is awesome. Has Intimidate. Whenever a human deals damage to you, destroy it, which is a more relevant ability than people remember. Other non-human creatures you control have +1/+1 and Undying. Undying is a trigger of when your creature dies, the creature comes back with a +1/+1 counter if it didn't have a counter on it. This card has so many applications outside of just being a value card because you basically get your creatures for double duty. This guy is a combo monster. Combos with Triskelion, you have to do the targets correctly though, because other non-humans get +1/+1 and Undying. So Triskelion is a 2/2 with 3 counters on it. So you have to shoot someone for 1 damage and then shoot Triskelion twice in order for him to die, to come back with the fresh counters because it will have 0 on it by that point. Walking Ballista requires
Extra steps! Eek, Barbadurkle. Somebody's gonna get laid in college.
You need like an aristocrat of some kind of like Zulapur Cutthroat or Painter Servant, because you can't shoot someone else with that counter because you are forced to shoot himself with that Undying counter. So that means you're not shooting other players at the table. My other application that I love doing this in is my Gyruda slot machine deck. I featured it on my channel. It's one of my favorite decks of all time. It has quite the reputation at my LGS. It garners a lot of groans and just pisses people off because it just takes RNG to the max, and I treat it like I'm actually in the casino and I'm just an obnoxious gambler. People have a ball going with me to a casino because I'll stretch $20 out all night long, and I get excited over pennies at a slot machine. And as long as the game has a fun theme to it, you'll be able to hear me on the other side of the casino over all the other machines and all the other excited patrons and or pissed off ones. In the Gyruda deck, I'm playing a clone deck. I have Gyruda come and play, and I mill for, if I hit an even clone, it comes in, and due to state-based action, it dies as a copy of Gyruda. And then there's an ETB trigger from that Gyruda. It dies, and then the Micaeus trigger happens. because it's a state-based action. The Gyruda copy trigger is still on the stack, and the Undying trigger goes on top. Creature comes back, dies again, but it doesn't come back a second time because it had a counter, and then there's a second Gyruda trigger. So it effectively acts like a Panharmonicon in that deck.
Let's go to the bonus now.
And the also sweet kick-ass feature of Mikaeus is he is an even cost creature. So if I end up milling him with my Gyruda or a clone, guess who I'm going to friggin' pull out of my bin and put into play? It's a really fun deck. Can get a copy of this for $20. He's worth every penny. I'm excited for this. You should be excited if you get him in your packs. I'll be going after that full art because it looks badass, and I can't wait to replace my copy of it. Demon Lord Bells Unlocked. That's another dud. It's a bulk rare. You can get them for 80 cents. 6 drop for 6/6 with flying and trample. That gets you some extra cards. There's no guarantee how many cards you're going to get because you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card, and you put that card in your hand. If it costs 4 or more, you repeat that process. So there's only so many triggers you could get because you have to have a functional deck, and most of the spells in your deck are going to be under 4 CMC. You're most likely only going to draw 1 card. Because stat blocks don't matter, drawing 1 card doesn't matter. It's an expensive creature, is why it's an 80-cent card. Demonic Tutor is getting a full art treatment. This is a pretty sweet banger. It's the best tutor in the game because you could get anything at the cheap cost of 2 mana, and it's put in your hand the turn you play it. Nothing compares in the realm of tutors to Demonic Tutor. It kind of blows my mind how this card has not been banned in Commander for how powerful it is. It's just that good. I don't want to talk too much about the RC, and I'm not in charge. I'm just a little pissant. I have my little YouTube channel with its own little opinions. The full art looks awesome. I want one. I assume everyone else wants one too. You can get a copy for $35. It's worth every penny. Stormkiln Artist, another full art treatment, also looks badass. This is an extremely popular uncommon. I think this is up there with Swords of Plowshares and Path to Exile in terms of popularity and expense. I don't know if it's $10. I think this full art version might reach that price tag because of how popular and how strong he is. He's really integral to Storm decks because not only do you get a treasure for casting a spell, you also get a treasure for the copy. Let's say you cast Grape Shot and it was the 5th spell. Not only you get a treasure for the original Grape Shot, you get 4 more treasures for the other 4 copies of Grape Shot. And in Storm decks, it's all about drawing cards and having the mana required to cast those spells. And Stormkiln Artist accomplishes that equation real well. $5. It's a rare quality to find in uncommons, and it's $5 for a reason. And that full art version, oh man, people are going to be foaming at the mouth for that. Nahiri the Lithomancer. This is a $10 card. I have never played it. I have never seen anyone play it. It kind of... Remember when I was talking about Obnixilis yesterday about these Planeswalker cards? These 2 are the worst. The best ones is Daretti, the blue one Teferi, the green one, which is Freyalise, who is also really good. Sorry, Nahiri. You're not worth the $10 price tag. You never will be. If you bought the Commander decks, you went in it with your friends where each of you buy one of the 5 and play each other. The white and black ones were awful, and those players kind of got hosed. Tempt with Vengeance. This is a card that fits in a lot of niche decks. The niche that everyone knows of is Purphoros, because you want your cards to be very dense in terms of how many bodies gets put into play. My rule with that deck is I want to put a body in for 1 mana or less, and this card fits that bill really darn good because you sink whatever amount of mana into this plus the 1, your body per mana ratio becomes a fraction, and also you do an insane amount of damage. It's just a good finisher. It says tempting offer, but your opponents will never do it because whenever they, pay mana into this, they give you more 1/1 elementals as well. More fuel to kill them. And that's why this is a $12 card exclusively for 1 deck. I already have my copy, so I don't really care. God. We're back to this discussion. If you weren't here yesterday, The Confluences don't get played anymore. They just don't. I'd rather do something else for 5 mana. And each card slot in your deck is important. If you're not making your opponent sweat, a little bit with every card that you play, then you should probably take it out and reevaluate and find something else to put in there. Because for 5 mana, I'd be making heads spin. This just doesn't do it. And for $1 at a rare slot, I'd be pissed if I opened this. Wayward Swordtooth. You get a copy for $8. It has Ascend. If you don't know what Ascend is, it's rather easy to accomplish. You can't attack or block with this permanent until you have 10 or more permanents in play. It's like an emblem. No one can mess with it. It's always going to be yours. And it's not something you'd like pass around. Everyone, when they ascend, they get their own emblem. It doesn't have the best of rate of putting lands into play for 3 mana because Azusa does it and Exploration does it better because it's only 1 mana for the same effect. And that's all that people play this for. One-on-one commander, Canadian, Highlander, or stat blocks matter a ton. And Wayward Swordtooth will be pulling a lot more weight. Like in a 1-1 scenario, I would rather be playing Swordtooth over Exploration or Azusa any day just because they have to deal with it. You're chunking them for 1/8 of their life every time this thing cracks you. And it's an efficient blocker. Is it worth $8? No. After this printing, it'll be more appropriately priced for sure. I already own my copy, not interested. But for those of you who are, this is a good day to be playing Magic. Real Behemoth. Fun facts about this card is before this printing, it was a lizard, and they errated it to dinosaurs when Ixalan came out. Let's take a look at that version. Here you go, lizard. If you have the older copies from Conspiracy, and you play this and you told someone it's a dinosaur, it can be a point of contention where you have to Google it, and luckily now you don't have to. It's pretty darn good. You get the Monarch, so you get an end sub draw trigger. It's a 5/5. It has evasion with trample. And the cherry on top that everyone plays this for is you get to add additional mana when you tap your lands, as long as you're the Monarch. Because it has evasion and it has a good stat block, getting the Monarch back is pretty easy, just from this card operating by itself. Of the creatures that give you a Monarch, this is at the tippy top of the best. And it's worth the 6 mana and probably the $10. It'll be nice that this is getting a cheaper price tag. The other cool part about this card is you could flicker it and get the Monarch back. If you can't get in with damage and you're playing, let's say, Rune, man, you're gonna annoy some people. You'll just deny them their Monarch trigger.
King in the castle, king in the castle. Have a chair, I have a chair. Oh, go do this, king in the castle.
Bribery. I have this version, which looks spectacular. If you don't know what it does, it lets you go through an opponent's library to get a creature, and you put that on the battlefield under your control. I find myself running this a lot less. You could spend 5 mana to get a mediocre creature if you target the wrong person. And that's why people are kind of turned off to playing it, like myself. And that's probably why it's sitting at a $12 price tag. I'd say for $14 or $12, you're getting it for a good deal. Awakening Sun's Avatar. Jesus, I hate board wipes that cost more than 5 mana. We saw like 3 or 4 of them yesterday, and this is no different than that. It blows my mind that this card is $10. If you look over here, where you see the MTGO price of it being 2 cents, that's about the value that I think this card sits at because of this obnoxiously stupid CMC. I can't stand this card or any board wipe that has more than 5 mana and doesn't do anything particularly special. Like if I'm paying extra, I want it to exile stuff or do something more than your typical destroy. And it could be one-sided if you're playing a dinosaur deck, but you're going to have a shitty curve in a dinosaur deck because most of them are pretty expensive. You could play 2-mana dinosaurs, but they're shitty cards. They're not worth your deck slots. It's not worth $10. It's going to hit $1 once this gets reprinted. I'd be pissed if you open this. Jizal the Goldmane. This is a bit of a mana taxing pain in the ass. It's why you could get a copy for 20 cents because it costs 4 to play, 5 to get that trigger. And then it takes the extra steps of filling your board to make it worth your while. It's just a bulk rare. It's a shitty card. What can I say? Tons of other go wide commanders I'd rather play and that you should rather play. It gives you the finisher, but it doesn't give you the evasion that you need to win. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Endrixar, Master Breeder. Whenever you cast a spell, put X 1/1 thralls into play, where X is the spell's current mana cost. If you control 7 or more thralls, you sack it. Endrixar is just a brutal aristocrat's enabler. The key is you never cast a creature spell that's more than 7 mana, which I don't know why you would ever do that in a aristocrat's deck anyways, because most of the creatures are cheap CMC-wise anyways, because you want them to die, get those drain effects from Zulaport Cutthroat. That's why this guy lends himself so well, because you don't have to sacrifice cards to do the thing you want to do. You sacrifice the tokens that you make off of this, and as long as you have a sack outlet and you could sack the tokens in between your creature spells that you cast, you'll never reach the 7 to force you to sack him, and that's why he's particularly good. He's a bulk rare of $1.63, so if you're like value hunting, you'll be pissed. Yeah, God, I just so sick and tired of talking about confluences. I'm not gonna waste my time. Don't play them. That's the short gist of it. So just see the Brood Tyrant. This is another bulk rare for 36 cents. She's like a fringe CDH commander. She's like tier 2 or tier 1.5. In her heyday, she was definitely a tier 1. Mostly because of her colors. You could pretty much do damn near everything in these colors. You have the best removal, have the best interactions on the stack. You have the best ramp. All the tools are there. The best tutors too. There are other tutors in black that tutor for anything. Most tutors outside of black have restrictions of what you can find, and black typically does not, and that's why black is so good, and that's why the top tier CDH commanders that are tier 1, they all have black in them, because they depend on those tutors. But what she does is when she enters, you mill 3. Whenever one or more creatures are put in your graveyard from your library, you create a 2/2 black zombie token. The ETB trigger is negligible. That bottom trigger is what people care about. So your goal is to have as many instances of mill as you possibly can. A card that goes really well with this is Mesmeric Orb. I see people flub those triggers all the time in paper because they just throw everything together, but everything triggers separately as you untap a permanent. So each untap is a separate instance of mill. If say you mill 10 cards and you mill 5 creatures from among them, you get 5 zombie tokens. Now, let's think of another instance where you play a mass mill kind of card, like a Hermit Druid. That's one instance. So you could mill 30 creatures in that one instance and you would only get 1 zombie. It's about the frequency and not about the quantity in this kind of commander. And you'll make an army of zombies. And she lends herself to Reanimator strategies because you do some dirty shenanigans from your graveyard. If you're a collector and you care about value, especially when the packs are as expensive as they are. As it currently stands, I would be pissed if you're a new player and even if you don't have this. It's just like you could go out of your way and buy this for 36 cents on TCG Player. You know what I mean? So you shouldn't be thrilled if you open it in one of these expensive ass packs. This is like the Great Henge and Nekisar in that it just got a printing, and I don't know what they were thinking or planning. It's a good thing because it drives the value down for everyone else that wants to get a copy, but like for collectors, this pisses them off so freaking much. I don't care as much, but I can understand the gripes, and it just feels weird that they couldn't plan it just a little bit better. You couldn't wait a couple of months before reprinting this card again. It just feels dumb. Once it gets reprinted on August 4th, the multiple copies that's coming out and the large quantity that's getting, I don't think this card is worth $10. So I want to see this card get freaking slammed into the ground. It's a quality of life equipment. It might be cheap to equip and play. The stat increase doesn't matter. And the getting a basic land is a quality of life thing. My feelings about this lines up with the same of land tax as a $33 card. Cards are efficient. I don't need a ton of mana to win the game. The sweet spot for me is 6 mana. I will tear the game away from everybody with 6 mana. It's a 4 mana investment to get a land with this. I get ramp for 1 mana or less. This card gets cut for me all the time. And honestly, it should be for you. And the demand should not be high as it is. I think its price is based on the casual player base. And it just sucks because it screws over your fellow player base because $10 is not really affordable for new players and budget players. So, and if you're still playing this in a competitive deck, I suggest you go back and take it out and play something else. It's my boy, DJ Scarab. I love this guy. He's super sweet, and that he's difficult to get rid of. When he dies, he has an end step trigger would be returned to your hand, and he is probably the best zombie commander if you want to play a zombie tribal deck. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X cards, and then X is the number of zombies you control. You put everybody on a clock, and you get really good card selection. Since it's a pile of cards with scry X, you get to see all X of them. It's not like you scry one, make a decision, put it back on bottom or top, and you repeat that decision. You get to pick everything up and do it that way, which is a significant because you get to pick and choose. You could leave one card on top. You could leave two cards on top. You can throw it all to the bottom. It's very versatile. And then it kind of feeds into itself with its top ability and its middle ability, because for 4 mana, you can animate any creature from any graveyard as a 4/4 black zombie. So not only are you getting the value of everyone's hand-selected creatures, every card in your deck should be handcrafted, and like I said earlier, every card should make people uneasy, and creatures are no exception to that rule. So imagine them being on your field and then also feeding into your game plan at the same time. He's just an efficient game plan engine. You get a copy for $16, which is the version I like. I think we're back at that scenario of people don't like it because it looks weird. And I like it for that reason. I like pissing those people off. Got some severe OCD issues. If you don't own a copy, you'll be happy to open it in a pack. The value is there. Inspiring Statuary. This is a bit of a bulk rare, 36 cents. And the reason why it's like that, it's a bit of a non-bow with itself. Let me talk about what Improvise does. You can tap your own artifacts to pay a generic cost of your spells. For obvious reasons, requires you to play a bunch of artifacts. But if you're playing a bunch of artifacts, you don't have a lot of non-artifact spells to feed it. It's a non-bow, and that's why it doesn't get played as much and why it's as cheap. Synergy is super important right now. You can't just dip your finger in multiple different pots.
Wash your hands. Let the bubbles do their dance.
And expect your deck to function. It's an all or nothing game style right now. Pick a strategy, stick to it, and Inspiring Statuary is just, it doesn't work in today's meta that is Commander. If you have a commander that makes artifact tokens and a lot of them, then hell yeah, play Inspiring Statuary. That's where this card belongs. But outside of that, nah, I'd skip it. Scourge of the Throne. This is the version I have. It has a dethrone trigger whenever it attacks a player with the most life or tied for the most life. Not only do you get a +1/+1 counter, you get a bonus attack trigger. You get to untap all your attacking creatures after that phase and then have an additional combat step. You don't see that very often where you get to untap everything. The stipulation though is you can't attack the same person over and over again, and if you're the player with the most life, this card doesn't work. So it's a little inconsistent and might be why this is a $4 card from Tales of Middle-earth. Forcing this card into a bit of a bulk rare. So you should be pissed if you open this in your packs, because you could just buy it on TCG Player for $4 and save yourself the cost of buying these expensive ass packs. Kaikar, Wind's Fury. I love the art on this. Kind of reminds me of One Piece and the Koseki family sigil. I don't know if you're a One Piece fan. I'm a One Piece fan, so I want this thing. I love Japanese cranes, like badass and I don't know, majestic. Why this commander is really special is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get a 1/1 spirit, and whenever you could sack a spirit to add 1 red. The way people play this is in eggs. You want as many artifacts with 0 in their converted mana cost, because it effectively nets you a red mana, and then you sack it to make 1 red, and then you just, if you have a way to draw cards, you can go infinite, cast your library, or you could feed it into like a giant X spell like Crackle with Power and kill everybody that way. And that's why this guy is popular. He's also in the right colors of Jeskai. They're all about Spellslinger kind of stuff. If you didn't want to do the egg stuff, non-creature spells also include instants and sorceries, enchantments, what have you. I'm just telling you the most efficient way is playing artifacts. It's probably the best way of doing it. You get a copy free for 79 cents. So again, you're going to be pissed if you open this in a pack because you could get it for a lot cheaper online. As much praise as I give it, that's the unfortunate part. Kemba the Ka Regent. It's getting a full art treatment. I'm not going to bitch and moan about this card because it's getting downshifted to an uncommon. 25 cents for this. It's good for what it does. It's a Voltron commander that also causes your board to go extremely wide. Very rarely where you get to do both going really tall and going really wide with a deck. Like I said earlier, you want to dip your finger in one pot, and in this case, dipping your finger in the pot of playing Voltron covers multiple bases. Kemba's really cool. I used to play this when she first came out in Scars of Mirrodin, and I think she's still as strong as she was then. Give her a try. Highly recommend it. The best equipment in that deck is Konda's Banner, because you give all creatures that share a type and color with the equipped creature +2/+2. Your little army of cats get extremely threatening. That's like the dream setup with that deck. Time capsule time.
We're sending you back to the future.
This guy, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, make a 3/1 black and red Graveborn creature with haste, and you put it on the battlefield. The trigger is nice, kind of like Edrixar. If you wanted to run, this would be better than Edrixar because he's 3 colors, which opens you up to more cards. He's good for what he does. It's just, he's a bulk rare, and you're getting screwed over in your pack. Just should have stayed in the land of where time forgot. Even though Azami Elated Scrolls is a 90-cent bulk rare, this is like Krenko, a kill on sight commander. Wizards Tribal with this as their commander is the scariest freaking thing on the face of the earth, because you tap an untapped wizard, you draw a card. It basically makes all their wizards cantrip and turns them into repeatable cantrips. They draw their deck, play their deck, and just beat you with like a Thassa's Oracle. You feel helpless if this gets to do its thing. And the really crappy part about this is if it resolves, you're screwed, because it doesn't care about the summoning sickness. It's an activated ability. You tap it, and then there's a colon there, meaning you don't have to honor summoning sickness restrictions. So if they have a full board and they cast this and you can't counter it, they're about to refill their whole hand, and you're just out of luck, I guess. I know all it takes is one massive draw for you to be incredibly behind. I have the full art version for $13, but save yourself some money. Buy it for $1 in TCG Player. Curtain's Call. It's a bulk rare. You get it for 30 cents. But I play this in every one of my black decks. It's just too good. The going rate, because Undaunted reduces the cost of the spell, and most of the time you have 3 opponents, so this is a 3-mana destroy any 2 creatures. There's very few spells that do this. This is an instant speed card. This card is so good. I just wish it wasn't in here in the commander set sucking up your slot. If you didn't know about this card, you're in black, throw it in. The density is just too good. Lifeblood Hydra. Creatures with X counters on it. When it dies, you gain X life, draw X cards equal to its power. Because it's triple green X, I don't really like this card too terribly much. We need to call JG Wentworth, because when you need cards, you need it now, and it doesn't get you those cards. The idea behind this card is you dump a bunch of mana into it, and it's a big threat on the board with evasion that you have to kill. But because stat blocks don't matter and life totals start extremely high, people just don't care. They'd rather just deny you the card advantage, or they remove it some other way with like a bounce spell or an exile spell, which is growing in abundance in the meta right now. So it's just not as good. It's not worth $10. I think when it comes out in August, this is going to be a bulk rare that hits $1 or less. It's just a crappy card to open your back. Archfiend of Despair has a $45 price tag. Efficiency is very important to me, because you never want to see 8 mana spell cards in your hand at the very beginning of the game. It'll sit in your hand all game, and you might not be lucky enough to cast it because the game is fast. Fine in a reanimation kind of style deck, but it's only expensive because it has 1 iteration. It has a scary effect in that it doubles life loss on their turns. It's just, I could do it better for cheaper. Wound Reflection for 2 mana less, and it's a more difficult to remove permanent because it's an enchantment. This card's just overrated. I could not endorse this for people to buy. No one competitively is playing it. There's better things to do. Mind's Aglow.
I hate you!
Group hug cards, especially the ones that draw. It skews the game dramatically, especially the higher up you go in competitiveness. The players sitting to the left of the group hug deck are the ones that typically win the game. I hate knowing that someone is winning based on someone else's merit or not on merit of their own. They had help to get there, and Minds Aglow is a card that does that. What happens is everyone dumps their mana into this, the people who don't know any better, and everyone draws their cards, and the player who casts a spell, their turn ends. We go to the player to their left that has drawn 10 plus cards, and they have all their mana untapped. I have seen so many games where that player wins because of a play like this. I see it way too often. It really makes me annoyed. If I'm first in the turn order after that spell, I'm going to crush you. If there's another like seasoned player that's in between me, they're going to crush us. And in either scenario, I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good beating someone or beating other players because of someone else. And I hate losing for that same reason. As a player, you're allowed to play whatever you want. So maybe my gripes are unfounded. Let me know in the comments if anyone feels the same way. I just got done complaining about the last card. This card does the same thing. I don't like taking risks. I don't like it at all. I don't know why people play this kind of stuff, because you get nothing the turn you play it. That means everyone else goes before you in getting the sweet cheater play. But if you want to cheat stuff in, just play green and play the stupid like Elvish Piper amulet stuff and get your kicks that way. Don't do it in blue. Don't do this, please. Get your kicks the safe way. It's like the Dare commercials and trying to scare people off drugs.
This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
I want to do the same thing for this card. I've seen too many games where people win before it even makes it back to the player who played this spell so many times. It's just a stupid risk to take in a game. This is also a bulk rare. Closing thoughts about today's spoiler review. It's better than yesterday. I think yesterday it felt like everything was a bulk rare. Just everything. Today was slightly better, but the ratio is still not the best. I need to make a pile comparison where I make a grid of all the cards that I would recommend to people, and then I'd make a pile of all the cards I would not recommend to people. And I know that the pile on this side is significantly smaller. In terms of desirable stuff, the sealed prices have not budged. What I'm seeing on Reddit is there are people that are upset, and then there's people who are upset about the people who are upset. I think it's because we all love the game of Magic, and we take things incredibly personal when someone has a negative opinion about the thing that we love. So I look at it as more of like a tough love kind of a thing. If no one complains, nothing changes. I'm pretty fair about the things that I'm saying. Since packs are as expensive as they are, which I think this is what the complaining party is going on about, is that you're paying an exorbitant amount of money for these packs. And if the EV doesn't make up the pack price, then you're gambling. You're taking a risk cracking packs, and no one wants to take risk right now opening packs because there are so many bad bulk rares in this set. Either way, I don't really care because it's supply and demand. If you don't buy and these don't sell, the price goes down and we get what we want. That's why I don't really care. What I do care is when people are buying stuff at these stupid prices and just getting brought to hose town by these. Let's see if sales are still happening. Yeah. Today's the 13th. Highly don't recommend you buy these boxes at their current prices. Take my advice. Don't buy them. Get what you want. Be wise about it. Now that we've talked about those parties that are angry, let's talk about the party of people that are angry about essentially people bitching and moaning about this set. I kind of touched on it about, we all love Magic and we all are passionate about it, but I think it's more of like a doomsday kind of a story. People don't like hearing the sky is falling. When it necessarily may not. Magic is a hobby. It's you're going to be alive tomorrow if you don't have it. So it's nothing worth being entirely upset about. It just seems funny and an oxymoron to be like calling the kettle black about people being upset, thus in turn getting upset yourself. So personally, I kind of wish we were a little more respectful about each other's emotions. I think we all deserve to feel the way that we feel and express ourselves the way that we want to express ourselves. Whether that's cordial or not, that's none of my business, I guess, but I wish it was so. Have a good night.